Hello, everybody. How are you? How are things in your world? Guys, it's time for another Denver video. And this will be the final the fourth of four spotlight videos on the major league sports in the great city of Denver. We've covered them all except for the Colorado Avalanche of the National Hockey League. And that's what this video is going to be. It's going to be fairly long, so let's cover it now. This is a parody video. That means most of it, if not all of it, will be made up off the top of my head. I don't want you to get in there 15, 20 minutes and go, wait a minute. This is a bunch of bull hockey. Bull hockey? Bull hockey? Oh my gosh. So let's get right into it. The Colorado Avalanche started life as the Quebec Nordic Tracks up in Canada, where I used to live, my other home country. They were part of the World Hockey Association at that time, but then guess who merged? It was the WHA and the NHL. They merged together, and the team relocated to Denver. And they became the Avalanche. Avalanche. Hey, hey, hey. Ava Lanch. That'd be a good name for a spy. Eva Lanch. My name is Eva Lanch. Now, believe it or not, guys, this is a team that knows how to win. How do I know that? Because they won it all. Twice. They won the Stanley Cup twice. And we'll get into that. It's very exciting. They actually came out of the gate pretty quick. And, of course, they were another team. But nonetheless, as a very young Avalanche, they were able to win the Stanley Cup. And then once again later on. Well, we'll get into that, guys. So, first of all, what about the name Avalanche? So, Avalanche talks about in Canada, so they used to be the Nordic Tracks. And when they moved to the United States, there was this promotion that the team had to name the team. And the winning prize was they would sit you in a chair at center ice and pour $1 million worth of pennies onto your head. And there was a big debate in town as to whether this was a good idea, because although it sounds cool and would be dramatic on TV, which was part of the idea, to get that those TV cameras out there, some local, there's always these special interest groups, guys, these activists, and they said people are going to get hurt even if they wear a helmet, as the team said they would make them. Even if they wear a helmet, they're going to get hurt by having all these coins poured on their head. $1 million worth of coins. And guys, the blowback on the activists was dramatic, because one of the local radio DJs made this a cause célèbre, meaning they took that and ran with it and started to rail back against the activists. And he said, if we want to dump an avalanche of money onto one of our fans, why shouldn't we be allowed to? If they sign a release and wear a helmet, they're going to be fined. It's going to be hilarious. And that was what the winning team name was, Avalanche. And sure enough, they sat this fellow down in the middle of the ice, and they poured $1 million worth of pennies, nickels, and dimes onto this guy's head. He was wearing a Colorado Avalanche helmet. And not only did he survive, he stood up and swam in the money. He did a swimming stroke. He did a backstroke. He pretended he was coming to the wall and making the turn like in a pool. He was so excited to be in all of that money, guys. And so it just goes to show, if you're going to try to rail against a non-railing target, meaning I think these activists sometimes get a little crazy and take all the fun out of things. and trying to get worried that someone's getting injured by a couple pennies dropping on their lap. Well, hey, you can injure me all you want for $1 million. So the name stuck, and they became the Colorado Avalanche. Well, that kind of community support has been very, very critical in the success of the team, because it wasn't long after that that they went to the Stanley Cup Finals. And not only did they win, but they sent a notice to the rest of the league is that we are here and you're going to have to go through us to get to the top. Now, the response from many of the pundits was, okay, congratulations, but to win the Stanley Cup, you had to beat the Florida Panthers? Oh my, I know a junior A league team in Colorado Springs that could beat the Florida Panthers. And then the question became at that time, how did the Florida Panthers sneak in there to get walloped and clobbered by the Colorado Avalanche? Well, those are questions in the past. The record books are sealed, signed, and delivered, and we don't really know, but we do know that they were, in fact, the Stanley Cup champions in 1996. Now, what does that mean? That means they were the very first National Hockey League team to capture it all, to capture the crowning cup, to bring home the Stanley Cup in the year after relocating the team. And guys, if you don't think that's a major, major accomplishment, then you haven't moved yourself. Think about it. Not only were they moving the team, the whole team, from one city in the eastern side of the continent to the Midwest/West, the West, the mountains, they were moving countries. Now, I know that when you move in the town next door or across town or, gosh forsakes, down the block, it takes you 9 days because you always underestimate the amount of stuff you have. And so you bug your friend, hey man, can we borrow your truck? I just need to do a couple loads. I'm just moving down the block. And then what happens? You start pulling stuff out of closets. You start looking at all the stuff in the junk drawers. And not only do you have more than 2 loads, you've got 22 loads. And the person that lent you their truck is saying, hey man, I need my truck. I'm going to go camping. You said it would be only 4 hours, and it turns out it's 4 days. And not only do you lose the use of that truck for all future uses, you lose that friend in the process. Because you don't realize how much it takes to move all of your junk. Now think about the Nordic tracks, moving from Quebec, Canada, Quebec City, down to Denver to become the Colorado Avalanche. And not only that, they had to then have a contest to name the team and come up with the put all that new name and logos all over everything. Guys, it takes a while, but that didn't faze them a bit. They're like, this is nothing, man. Bring on the Stanley Cup, and they beat the gosh darn Florida Panthers. Now I know a grandma team that plays, a bunch of grandmas that play ice hockey in a grandma league. This is true. I know this league. And I know the winning team of that league could beat the Florida Panthers. But that's not, that's just the way it is. I mean, but the thing is, how many teams can say they've won a Stanley Cup? Not all of the teams. And here you have the new kid on the block that shakes off moving to a new country. I was about to say intercontinental, but I don't know if that fit. Intercontinental? And win the Stanley Cup. Now, probably, here's the thing. I really believe that year there was some sort of iron deficiency going through the league, and probably most of the teams were not playing at full strength. There had to be some sort of chemical or viral phenomena going on in the National Hockey League that year for the Colorado Avalanche to win. Because disregarding the Florida Panthers, or whatever their name is, They had to play a number of teams, guys, to have the record to get into the right position to be able to. You see what I'm saying? They weren't all fall down grandma league level teams like the Florida Panthers. They played some real hockey teams. They played some real hockey. And it occurs to me that the other teams were not at full strength for the Avalanche to be able to win that first Stanley Cup. I just can't believe it myself. So, I checked with my friends at the CDC in Atlanta, and they were not able to find any research that showed a National Hockey League viral phenomena or any kind of iron deficiency or any kind of chemical imbalance throughout the league. But here's the thing, guys. These guys, they travel together. They're always together. And so I don't think it's that big of a stretch to think that some it's kind of viral infection was passed from one team member to another and then from one team to another once they're on the ice. I mean, those guys are always fighting. What happens when you open up a wound and you get a cut? Hey, viral infections get in there. Germs get in there, guys. So I think something happened to the league in that first year that the Avalanche was in the Stanley Cup, because I just don't see how it's possible that they moved from Quebec carrying all that stuff. Have you ever carried all the boxes? Think about all the boxes that you had, and you had to load them in that van. They had way too many boxes, and they would have lost all of their strength, guys. But they captured the Stanley Cup. So maybe there needs to be an investigation. I don't know. But nonetheless, they are the champions for that year, and let's give it to them. Now, let's cover the other one real quick. They won again. That's right. The Colorado Avalanche won the Stanley Cup twice. The second one was in the 2000-2001 season, or you could just say the 2001 Stanley Cup. So that kind of eradicates the first theory, because in that one they beat the New Jersey Devil May Cares 4-3. Okay, and that's the last time they've won since. So, why? That brings up the question, why? I mean, great, congratulations on the second win. That's more than most teams could ever do. But then they haven't been heard of since. So what's going on with the Avalanche? Well, there's a few things that we can look at. First of all, the ice in at where they play in their arena is built on the side of a mountain. So the thing is, there's only so many flat spots that you can put a surface the size of a National Hockey League rink. And of course, in Denver, it's growing so fast, they ran out of flat spots. So they had to go to the nearby mountains, and they found an open area. I think one of the ranchers up there just donated his back lot that he wasn't using. They had a duck pond back there that they dredged in 1949. And ever since then, all they've done back there is play some sandlot baseball when family reunion time comes around. So he donated it, and they put it in there. But the problem is, now the teams are playing on the side of a hill, essentially. You're playing at an angle, which when you're coming downhill, man, you can get some speed going, guys. And it has led to some very exciting plays from the Colorado Avalanche. Now, on the other hand, when you're going back up the ice, and of course both teams, you switch ends, I get it, but man, you're talking about some strong calves, some strong thighs, and strong ankles pushing you up the ice, and now you're passing a puck between each other as you're pushing up the ice. It's very, very difficult. And so I think that first year they were playing on a level surface, and then once they found their permanent home, which was on an angled surface, they just haven't, they won that Stanley Cup, but they haven't been heard of since. I think because they moved to that angled ice surface after they won the second Stanley Cup. Now, here's the good thing about it, is that there's been photos of these Avalanche players in the offseason or in between games as they shop around town and just are out with their families, going to their kids' baseball games, whatever it is, soccer games, hockey games. And it's freaky the size of the calves, the thighs, and the ankles of these players because they play halfway downhill, halfway uphill. Well, I mean, it looks like one of those Photoshop deals where they exaggerate the size of somebody's thighs or, but that's their real thigh. I mean, you have guys whose thighs are larger than their waist, all right? So it looks like they have one person's body on the top and another person's body on the lower half because their thighs and calves and ankles are so thick from skating uphill half the time. Now, there have been complaints from other teams that have to play the Avalanche and play in that particular type of environment, but it turns out there's no league rule that says you have to have a flat ice surface. So it's a loophole that the Avalanche have been able to exploit for many years now. But the question is, why haven't they been able to return to the Stanley Cup circle? Why are they not hoisting the Stanley Cup above their heads like they have twice? They know how to do it. It's in their bones. Like some of these teams have never experienced it, so they don't know. But the Avalanche have been there. And so let's talk about some of the other reasons that it might be. So I think partly you have a lot of the players were again part of the Quebec Nordic tracks, and were used to that Canadian food. If you've ever had that French Canadian food, you know that it's rich. That's a lot of pastries, a lot of lush pastas, a lot of cheese. And that's the kind of diet that, I mean, you can skate well because it provides a lot of carbs, and your carbs are going to burn up quick, right? Carbs are fast-burning fuel. But once they got down to the United States, all of that cheese started to solidify, and they started going to fast food. Because when you're moving, you don't have the stove going. You don't have the oven ready. It's not even on. You haven't even called the place for power. So what do? You get fast food. And so that's when they really started to play well. Because what does fast food do for you? Fast food gives you that sudden burst of energy because now your blood sugar is skyrocketing. Well, once they were settled in and their family started to cook food, I almost said their wives, but let's just say the family started to cook food, because who knows who cooks. Plus, they're making that NHL money. They probably had a staff. Once they started to get a good diet, it cleaned out all of that high-energy fast food sugar high, and it really depleted their energy levels, guys. I think that's a lot of what happened. So that's one theory that hasn't been fully tested or looked at, but it's just doesn't make sense that they haven't won a Stanley Cup since. So another theory is that they just have gotten lazy. Because let's face it, when you're up there in the Canadian winter, you spend so much of your time just surviving that cold, right? You are wearing 18, 19 layers of clothing. And when you come down to the United States, I understand that there is a winter in Denver, but it's nothing like that Canadian winter. I mean, in Canada, you're going to have 19, 20 feet of snow every month. And that's probably what they get in 3 years in Denver, okay? And so you spend all your time and energy doing that. And then once they got to the United States and they were within a short plane ride to Vegas, short plane ride to Los Angeles, where they could hang with the movie stars and other NHL stars, they got lazy. I think that's a really strong theory. And they went to Vegas, they were gambling, they went to Los Angeles, they were sitting poolside with some cool sunglasses on, they were hanging out with bottles and models. I think that's exactly what happened. And they got lazy, and they just haven't been able to get back there. You start making that American money. Up in Canada, when they were the Quebec Nordic tracks, they were paid in Canadian money. Have you ever tried to spend that money? It's like 4 by 6 feet wide. It's giant. You got to fold it. And by the time you fold all that money, it's the thickness of 3 phone books. And you try to stick that in your pocket, you're gonna get scoliosis in 3 or 4 days. So they come down to the United States. Not only did they have American money, which is much smaller and more portable, but also there's more access to digital money, paying with their phone. So I think they just got into the star lifestyle of the United States, and they started to enjoy hanging around bottles and models till all hours, and they just weren't able to focus on the ice. I don't know this for a fact. It's just a theory I have, because I used to live in that colder climate and I moved back to the United States. I've experienced it myself. And a lot of people will say, well, you never played National Hockey League level hockey. You might have played for the neighbor or the Mighty Mite team or the Pee Wee League or whatever, or even your high school, but you never were an NHL player. Well, that's what you say. But if it weren't for a couple of knee injuries, I would have been in the National Hockey League. There was one time a guy closed a penalty box. The referee closed the penalty box on my knee and shattered the bone that had to be replaced, and they couldn't even set it properly. So the doctor went in with WD-40 and some duct tape to set that kneecap bone, which floats above your knee hinge. And then I got into a fight not with another team, not with a fight on the ice, but I got in a fight with the concession because the Pepsi machine wouldn't pop out the Pepsis. And the concession guy's like, well, you should be drinking Diet Cokes anyway. Look at you. You're chubby. And we got into a little scuffle, and he ended up kind of wedging my knee in between the foosball machine and the Pac-Man machine, and then it broke again. So, guys, these are serious injuries that kept me out of the National Hockey League, okay? But I had the skill, I had the talent, I had the grit. And I also grew up in Edmonton, and there is a disproportionate number of players in the National Hockey League that came from Edmonton, like 80%. All right, so, don't tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not bitter over not being able to fly first class, eat the best pastas in the world, get steak anytime I want, and hang out with bottles and models. And I'm not jealous at all. I'm not bitter at all, okay? I like my life in the United States, looking at the National Hockey League from afar with tears coming down my face. I like it, okay? I like the salt of the tears. It tastes good. So I know what I'm talking about, and I just think that's a theory. Again, I'm not accusing the Avalanche of this laziness. I'm just saying it's a possibility. That's all I'm saying. All right. I think we understand each other. So, guys, that is a very, very quick snapshot of the Colorado Avalanche, where they came from, what they're about, what's going through their mind, what kind of shoes they wear, what kind of clothes they wear, why they drive the cars they do, what kind of miles per gallon are they getting. These are all questions we're going to answer in additional videos. We're going to have a whole series on this team because it's such an important part of this great city of Denver. And we'll look at some of the stars of the past. That's always a popular one that people want to know. Who were the big stars of the past and what made them that? And maybe we can get some interviews going with those players. And then we might even talk to some of the wives and find out what is their theory as to why the Avalanche. That an alternative newspaper in Denver surfaced that idea that the wives were romancing their husbands too much, and so their energy levels were dropping on the ice. I don't know. That's the old Rocky theory, but who knows? Nobody really knows. Only time will tell. And of course, we all know they'll be back in the winner's circle as Stanley Cup champions. Probably not for, 30, 40 years, but they'll be back. They'll be back. All right, guys, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them right here on the YouTuber. You can get me on the Tweeter machine as well. If you loved it, if you hate it, if you got additional information, if you topics you want us to cover about the Avalanche that maybe I didn't mention, that's always a good one. Tell us, and then I'll come back with some more BS that I make up off the top of my head. All right, talk to you.